Okay, meet Teena. Now, there are 5 mistakes that are happening currently with Teena's hair that, well, are making her look a little bit older. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm actually going to walk you through exactly what those mistakes are, and much more importantly, how she can address those mistakes so she can get a more youthful look. We're going to do that right here, with that in the background, because that view does not suck. Oh, and before we dive in, this is a very, very special episode. I am super excited for it, and I'll explain exactly how this is going to be different than any episode or any video I have ever done in the past in just 1 second. If you are new to this series, I'm also going to explain exactly even what this video is all about. And if you're not new to the series, do me a favor, and while I explain all of this, why don't you go to the comment section below and tell me if you can guess the 5 mistakes that I'm seeing, and yeah. Okay, so now let's dive into what's going on here. Okay, this is a series where subscribers from this channel actually send in photos of themselves asking the question, how can I get a more youthful look? What mistakes are happening with my hair? And then I randomly choose one of those subscribers and I break down the mistakes that are happening with their hair, and I, like I said before, explain to you what they are and how they can address them. And then typically what I do is I actually show you on photoshopped versions of them exactly what it would look like if they actually took my suggestions and addressed those mistakes. And then at the very end, I typically will give you some sort of curveball, some different style maybe, or different color that they could move towards that may or may not have anything to do with what they were talking about, just to give you different options. Now, this video is extremely different. In this video, I'm super excited to say that I partnered up with eSalon, and because of that partnership and sponsorship, I am able to not just show you a photoshopped version of what her color mistakes would look like, but even better, I'm going to show you real life version of exactly what it would look like if she took my suggestions. So yes, we actually talked, we told her what mistakes I believed that she was making, we made some suggestions, and then eSalon actually formulated color for her, sent it to her, and Teena actually colored her own hair at home. And now you get to see exactly how that turned out and exactly if my suggestions worked or if she hates me and I suck. So let's find out, should we? Alright, let's dive into the mistakes. Now, this is kind of a special situation, and since I was teaming up with eSalon, I decided to kind of throw out an email, kind of a contest, if you will, to see who would get chosen to be part of this episode. And so, while this wasn't a normal situation, Teena did still send an email with a description of kind of the problems that she was having, like normal. So, let me walk you through a little bit of this email to kind of explain why I made the decisions that I made. So, let's read the email. The email says, "Hi Justin, I need to cover my gray and keep costs down because my husband retired early for medical reasons. So learning how to color my own hair would be great. I have colored it myself in the past during COVID, so I have a little experience. I can go darker. Thanks for the consideration." And there was another email that said, "When considering hairstyles for me, I'm going to toss this out there for your professional opinion. An asymmetrical bob." Okay, so as you can see, there's not a ton of info in that. However, except for the fact that she talked about an asymmetrical bob, she does give me some insight into some different cutting options, and it does sound like coloring her hair at home, if possible, would be a great idea for her. So I felt like this is a perfect opportunity. Alright, so now, knowing that, let's dive into the mistakes. Okay, now mistake number 1 is that there just isn't enough face framing layers in the front, and there's nothing to kind of connect the bangs into the length. Now the concern with this is that it's adding a little bit of bulk to the sides, and that bulk is actually adding more squareness to the overall shape of her hair and the shape of her face. More importantly, this isn't really accentuating her great cheekbones, it's really just adding fullness to her cheeks. Now mistake number 2 is that it looks to me that there's a little bit more layering on one side than there is on the other. When you look at the front view, you can see that this is also creating a tiny bit more bulk right here on the side she's parting her hair from. This is also adding a bit of flatness to the crown, which is again kind of adding back more to that whole overall squareness look. Mistake number 3 is that the bottom is just a little bit over layered. Now this is hard to see, but if you look at this photo right here, just in this area, you can start to see that there's a little bit of pieciness down here, and there's a lot of layers at the very ends. One concern of this is that it doesn't hold shape very well, but the biggest concern is it'll start to make the ends look very thin. And when ends look thin, they have a tendency to look less healthy. So her overall hair at this length is going to look less healthy than it actually is. Now the next 2 mistakes are all about color. So I'm going to actually let you into the behind the scenes a little bit here, and let's kind of talk about those mistakes in a conversation that I actually had with eSalon and Teena. So Teena, first of all, thank you for the support on the channel, and thank you for even like offering up to do this. I'm excited for you. Teena, just so you're aware, this is Ryan. Ryan's kind of my point man to connect with when it comes to eSalon. And Genevieve, I really appreciate you being on board with this as well. This is going to be a huge help. So to kind of catch you up, Teena, on what's going on and where we're at with eSalon, they go through an extensive online consultation to kind of break down all the questions that need to be asked so that you can figure out actually what color is going to work for you. But today we even get to kind of go a step farther. You actually have on board one of their color specialists. Genevieve's actually a color specialist. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan. If Teena were to just log online and had some questions, this would be a service that she would be able to use or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So if she were to go through our color quiz and kind of select a color that wasn't achievable at that time, we would have a colorist kind of reach out and say, these are your options that would best suit you for kind of what you want in your hair journey. Like if you want to get to this place, it may take a few extra steps. And we wouldn't do anything that would kind of like damage your hair or do anything that would be like too extreme. So we have like colorists like Genevieve and other people on our customer service team that would be able to kind of guide you into the right direction to make sure that you're satisfied with your color.
Okay.
So it's a really big deal. So first of all, the things that I noticed, your hair is probably a tiny, just from those photos, looked a tiny bit on the even warm side. So I definitely noticed that we could kind of just cool that down a little bit. The first thing, if I'm completely honest, that I noticed, I love the dimension that your hair could have, but I love the idea of going darker and having that dimension. I gotta be honest, and I'll be frank, it was because of your eyes, right? Again, but not dark.
One thing, I think if you go too dark, I don't like that one dimension look.
You legitimately nailed it. Like you pretty much just summarized every single one of my videos I've ever created when it comes to talking about color specifically. Natural color is not one color. And so when everything does become one color, it looks very much unnatural, which is fine if that's what you're going for, but it also doesn't have the movement and texture.
When I do color my hair, I notice the darker I get, the glossier my hair gets and the healthier it looks.
So darker hair actually does have an ability to reflect light differently, so will have a tendency to look shinier, and more often than not it does, because of that extra little bit of luminance and shine, it can have a tendency to also look a little bit healthier, right? Also, darkening your hair more often than not is less aggressive in terms of damage than lightening your hair is, so that is going to lend itself to being a little bit healthier regardless. I would say whatever color we choose, you apply to your roots for the full time, you comb it through the ends for maybe 10 minutes, let it coat it so you still have that dimension, so you're not putting it through the entire time. There's still going to be a lot of light in it because we're not fully depositing on all of the hair shaft. Does that make sense, Genevieve? What's your input on this?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. And then you won't have that like all over dark, fake box looking kind of thing. And then it will, help your eyes pop like you were mentioning. So I love that idea, especially for this time of year too.
It's going to be a shade darker than where you're at right now, but I don't think it's going to be shockingly dark.
Yeah, I think we could do like between a 5 and a 6. Like we can make up a 5.5.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Fantastic.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you. You guys, I really appreciate you doing this with me.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for hopping on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, and if you like the idea, the format of this video, and you want to see more videos, or maybe you want to take part in an upcoming video where eSalon and I team up again and do this all over, go ahead and comment below. Let me know. Yeah, I'll work on seeing if I can make that happen because I think it is awesome. All right, back to the video. Okay, now that we know all the mistakes, let's go ahead and take a look at exactly what these mistakes would look like if Teena took my suggestions and made some changes. Okay, so the first mistake was just about the lack of layering in the front and how it was adding more squareness to the overall shape. And the second mistake was about the seemingly unevenness of the layering and how it looks to be more layered on one side. And this was also kind of drawing more of the flatness at the top and adding again more squareness to the overall shape. So if we actually evened those layers up and gave the front a little bit more layering, this is what that would look like. Now, as you can see, this is not a massive change, and if you know me, you know I always say it's not always big changes that make a difference. Many times it's the small things that add up to create a much larger difference, and this is exactly that case. As you can see, even though it's not a large change, it's starting to open up Teena's face a bit and starting to accentuate cheek structure versus just adding width to the cheeks. Now, one of the best parts about this is that front layers, you can either style them into the face or out of the face. And if you style them out of the face, it's going to look very similar to what Teena had before, which was a little bit less layering. So even though it does a great job of removing the bulk, it still doesn't have to look wildly different than what Teena had in the first place. Okay, now mistake number 3 was that the ends were just a little bit overlayered and it was making them look a little bit thinner and ultimately making Teena's hair look less healthy than it actually is. If we let some of those layers grow out a little bit and filled those ends in, this is what that would look like. Now, as you can see, again, not a massive change, but it goes a long way to adding a little bit of density to her overall shape. This, combined with everything else, is going to help her hair look a lot fuller, but much more importantly, a lot healthier, as well as having a stronger line at the bottom is going to help support layers better and just help the overall shape look stronger. Okay, now, the next mistakes were about color. You saw us talk about that, and you know that Teena has colored her hair now. So are you ready to see A, what it looks like, and B, learn whether or not she hates me and if she hates her hair? Well, let's find out. Now, when we talked about the color, if you remember, we spoke about it being a little bit too light overall and a little bit too warm overall. The biggest concerns here for Teena were that she doesn't want to go too dark, but at the same time, we also recognized the value in going a little darker than what she was because that would really make those beautiful eyes of hers pop. So we were kind of riding a fine line. Now, we also, though, had a big concern about removing some of the dimension from her hair. One of the biggest concerns with adding color to your hair is making it look too flat, because that just doesn't look natural, and it doesn't give the hair a nice shape or movement. So we wanted to make sure that we went dark enough to make her eyes pop, but still left her the ability to have that dimension. And at the same time, cooling this all down so that it wasn't too warm, but not going too cool. I don't think it was a tall order at all. So, after eSalon did formulate her specific color for her, as well as send her instructions of exactly how to apply it correctly so that we wouldn't lose all that dimension at the ends, well, this is how it turned out. Now, I personally love it. It is a very slight change, but again, this whole video is kind of wrapped up in the idea of not making massive changes, but still making large improvements through minor changes. And I think that's what happened here. She still has fantastic dimension. It's a little bit cooler, but holy geez, look how much her eyes pop from this. And more importantly even, look how much color it adds to her skin tone. I feel like she looks way less washed out, just going a tiny bit darker. But the bigger question here is, what does Teena think about this overall look? Well, here's the email that she sent after she colored her hair. She says, "I like it a lot. I was pleasantly surprised it did not come out a lot darker. I did it myself. I would definitely next time have my husband or a friend get my roots because I missed a spot. It's hard reaching around the back of your head. I'm just not that talented, LOL. And Teena, just a heads up, hey, I fully get it. You're totally new to this, and it is a little awkward at first. But I promise you, a couple times and you'll figure out very quickly how to use a mirror and get that back. Not a problem. I have plenty of students in my online course all about how to color and cut your hair at home that have made that switch. So yes, I promise you can do it. Just stick with it. So you guys, I want to know what you think below. Tell me, do you love her new color? Do you think she did an incredible job? I think she did. And if you don't think she did an incredible job, just don't say it. Okay, now with that said, let's dive back into the fact that she did talk about an asymmetrical bob. So, is that an option, or should she move that direction? Well, let's talk about it. So, Teena mentioned an asymmetrical bob, and I had to ask myself, does that make sense for her? So, as always, I want to be 100% honest with you. Now, this is an opinion, nothing more, nothing less than an opinion. It doesn't mean that it's any better or any more valid than anyone else's opinion. But when I think about asymmetrical bobs, I have kind of mixed feelings. Part of me feels like if they're done too dramatically, where it's way too short on one side and too long on the other, they kind of just don't make sense to me. They don't flow well, and I'm just personally not a big fan. But at the end of the day, if that's what you love, you need to do that regardless of what anybody else, including myself, thinks. Now, for me, if I'm going to go to an asymmetrical bob, I tend to leave it a little bit less dramatic, so a little bit closer to being an even bob, but still short on one side and longer on the other. So if we did move into something like that with Teena, this is what that could look like. Now, again, in pure honesty, I don't know that I love this look on her. I almost feel like it's not dramatically shorter on one side and longer on the other side enough to make it kind of work. And if we went to the point where we did make it more dramatic, it would almost be too dramatic, and to me, looking at Teena, I don't know that it would make sense for her style. So I kind of struggle with that a little bit. But I also have to think, well, What if she didn't mean asymmetrical? What if she meant an A-line bob, which just means that it's shorter in the back and longer in the front? So here's what that would look like. Now, personally, I really like this option. I love a bob shape for Teena. I think it's a fantastic idea, and you know me, I'm kind of a fan of bobs in general. But for this, I really like it because, again, especially from the profile, it has a great job of lifting the eye and really bringing that eye up the shape, which means that we're accentuating more cheek structure, accentuating more jaw structure, and overall just, it's a solid shape to begin with. But you know how this goes. I'm not really that interested in my opinion because I know what my opinions are. The question is, what is your opinion? So what do you think? Should she move into a bob shape? Should she leave it long? Should she layer it a little bit more like I was talking about before? And most importantly, how do you love her color? I personally love it. But again, what do you think? Comment below, let me know. All right, with that said, we'll see you next Tuesday. I'm gonna enjoy this ridiculous view. Just look, just look. Just, come on, just look. Can you? Are you looking? Did you look yet? Look at that. It's a lake, that's mountains right next, yeah, that's what that is.